Greetings. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. I'm Steve Deace. He's Todd Erzen. He's Aaron McIntire. We're brought to you by our friends over at First Cup Coffee Company with a flavor for every freedom-loving American. You can try it today and get a discount when you go to firstcup.com. Use the promo code DACE. Firstcup.com, promo code DACE. They put the roast on date right there on every single bag, so you can see that it is shipped to you within days of being roasted. First and foremost, it's a great cup of coffee, but number two, it also helps to promote American culture and heritage. Firstcup.com, promo code DACE. Firstcup.com, promo code DACE. Coming up on today's show, Neil McDonough is going to join us, who's kind of become Mr. Angel Studios, but the guy's been in a lot of big-time franchises, a lot of big-time properties and IPs in the past. He's got a new one out, Guns and Moses. He's going to tell us about that coming up here at the bottom of the hour. For Superhero T-shirt Week, I am repping the Captain America.
Because well done.
Mr. McDonough, of course, was one of the Howling Commandos and Captain America: The First Avenger had the whole getup, the facial hair right out of the comics. I mean, if you read that comic as I did growing up, man, it looks like he stepped right off the page into that film. All right, so yeah, he's going to join us at the bottom of the hour. Was that an okay geek tip? Is that still permitted?
Back when superhero movies knew what the hell they were doing.
There
yes.
you go. Okay, and then next hour it'll be Buy, Seller, Hold. So it'll be your turn, and then Daniel Horowitz is going to join us to take us inside politics in our final furlong of the program. But before we get there, of course, let us begin as we always do with Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by Perp Walks on the Way. Former CIA Director John Brennan and ex-FBI Director James Comey are being investigated for potential criminal conduct related to the 2016 Trump-Russia collusion hoax. The criminal referral involving Brennan was passed to the FBI by current CIA Director John Ratcliffe. According to Justice Department sources speaking to Fox News, the investigation into the Obama-era spy chief involves allegations he made false statements to Congress and is currently underway. It's unclear if the FBI's probe into Brennan, one of the 51 intelligence officials who falsely suggested Hunter Biden's laptop from hell could be Russian disinformation, will encompass more than his alleged false testimony to lawmakers. Meanwhile, the specific nature of the potential criminal matter involving Comey is unclear, but an investigation has been opened. I'm sure this development has nothing to do with the Jeffrey Epstein news this week. Here's President Trump at the White House yesterday.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable.
Meanwhile, Joe Biden's doctor, Dr. Kevin O'Connor, was set to testify in front of Congress today, but instead pleads the Fifth, hoping to avoid incriminating himself in the alleged cover-up of Joe Biden's mental capabilities while he was president. The Supreme Court cleared the way Tuesday for the Trump administration to lay off tens of thousands of federal employees and downsize their agencies without seeking the approval of Congress. In an 8-1 vote, the justices lifted an order from a federal judge in San Francisco who blocked mass layoffs at more than 20 departments and agencies. Liberal Justice Sonia Sotomayor notably became the second justice in as many weeks to pimp-slap Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson in her majority opinion. We're now learning more about that attack on law enforcement outside that Immigration and Customs Enforcement facility in Alvarado, Texas. The Department of Justice has charged 10 far-left Antifa extremists over their alleged role in the organized ambush attack. That attack included black-clad militants described as wearing military-style clothing, allegedly opening fire on police, launching fireworks at the ICE facility, and defacing property with phrases such as ICE pig and FU pig, according to the criminal complaint. The 10 defendants, all of whom reside in Texas, were arraigned on Monday in the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Texas and have each been charged with 3 counts of attempted murder of federal agents and 3 counts of discharging a firearm in relation to the crime of violence. Chief Executive Officer of the social media platform X is resigning. Linda Yaccarino served as CEO for the past 2 years. And finally, Vice President J.D. Vance addressed the Claremont Institute recently, and among the topics he discussed was what actually is an American.
If you were to ask yourself in 2025 what an American is, I hate to say it, very few of our leaders actually have a good answer. Is it purely agreement with the creedal principles of America? I know the Claremont Institute is dedicated to the founding vision of the United States of America. It's a beautiful and wonderful founding vision, but it's not enough by itself. If you think about it, identifying America just with agreeing with the principles, let's say, of the Declaration of Independence, that's a definition that is way over-inclusive and under-inclusive at the same time. What do I mean by that? Well, first of all, it would include hundreds of millions, maybe billions of foreign citizens who agree with the principles of the Declaration of Independence. Must we admit all of them tomorrow? If you follow that logic of America as a purely creedal nation, America purely as an idea, that is where it would lead you. But at the same time, that answer would also reject a lot of people that the ADL would label as domestic extremists. Even though those very Americans had their ancestors fight in the Revolutionary War and the Civil War. And I happen to think that it's absurd, and the modern left seems dedicated to doing this, to saying you don't belong in America unless you agree with progressive liberalism in 2025. I think the people whose ancestors fought in the Civil War have a hell of a lot more claim over America than the people who say they don't belong.
And that's what happened while we were away.
That was, if you get a chance, I've seen about 2/3 of it in various compiled clips, but from what I've seen, that speech by the vice president this past weekend at Claremont was an absolute tour de force, if you get a chance to check that out. Aaron's Montage brought to you by our friends over at Taiga Coolers. You guys recognize the name. They've been with us before. We've told you about them before, and now it is Taiga Cooler season. They're the real deal. 100% American-made, built for people who still believe in self-reliance, craftsmanship, good old-fashioned freedom, faith, family, and freedom. In fact, and their coolers are injection molded right here in the good old US of A. So they're cool, they're tough, dependable. They keep your stuff that you want cool this time of year as cool as it can be. But here's the thing that also sets them apart. They're customizable. They're great at customization. You want to put a corporate logo on there, a family crest, basically anything that's not obscene or violates a copyright, they can customize it for you, which kind of takes this to the next level as well. So go to taigacoolers.com, TAIGA for taigacoolers.com. Get your custom cooler built your way by folks who believe in the same things you do. All right. And tell them Steve Deace sent you. Use the code Steve at checkout. You'll get 10% off. Code Steve at checkout for 10% off at taigacoolers.com. TAIGA. Taigacoolers.com. Code Steve for 10% off. All right. I want to address the ongoing self-cornering. This is what's happening here with Epstein is the first example of the kind of rake step we saw all too often during Trump's first term, especially early on. Just rakes that don't need to be stepped on. In this case, though, as I said yesterday on the program, it is in sharp contrast to the overall performance of this administration, pretty much on every other front. We can disagree, agree, and we do amongst ourselves here at The Blaze. We can agree or disagree about how true to our ideology the policy aims and goals they're accomplishing are. I think to me, I'd much rather have that debate than which train car would you like? I think that's a better debate. Mm-hmm. And it's a more fun debate. It's a fervent and spirited debate. And there are people with varying degrees of opinion all across the spectrum of the right, just like you see right here at The Blaze. So when I say that, I'm not necessarily giving them high or perfect marks for ideological precision, more in terms of political execution. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah.
The way that they have executed as a White House, I mean, essentially since election night itself, when Trump could have taken the victory lap of all victory laps and was deserved in doing so, and instead, shifted right away to leading the country, pointing out high profile cabinet appointments he's going to make. He was on agenda 5 minutes after he declared victory, and they have executed like that for the better part of the first 6 months in office. Fair?
Yes.
And then there's this particular story, which has been fire up the Benny Hill theme music almost from the beginning. Yesterday, we spent a lot of time discussing why. Clearly, there are some sensitive, go back and listen to that show. We're not going to rehash that. We did that all yesterday. Clearly, there's some sensitive aspects to this that are compelling this administration to back itself into corners that are just easily deconstructed, regardless of what Ben Shapiro claims, easily deconstructed, easily deciphered, easily debunked. Don't stand up to, well, there's no Epstein. Well, I mean, I don't know. You say they keep telling us they have videos of abuse, right?
Yeah.
How about telling us who's doing the abusing? Step 1, watch said videos. Step 2, identify who the abusers were, who the producers were, and who the distributors were of said abuse. Fair? Okay. Step 3, write names down of said people. Step 4, with step 3, you have what is commonly referred to as a list. Okay. And then with step 4, after you've done that, you give us the list. Okay. I mean, it's really simple. This is a self-cornering, which begs a question, and I think a longer conversation, which is why we had it yesterday, of why are they choosing to corner themselves here? Today, I want to talk about the political realities of this, because those are starting to hit now too. Donald Trump has been, even at his most frustrating times for me during his first term, 50 times the president for us that George H.W. Bush ever was. All right? So I'm not drawing a moral equivalency here, but a situational one. Do you remember what George H.W. Bush's big promise was when he ran for the White House? Remember what it was?
Read my lips, no
Read
new
my
taxes.
lips, no new taxes. I mean, that was the money shot of his convention speech. That's where he gave that promise, right? Okay. And the Democrats are running on a massive tax increase under Michael Dukakis. And this was his biggest inflection point of difference between the two, that he'd keep the Reagan economy going. And the three things, if you remember the 88 campaign, the 3 images that the Bush campaign made sure you saw down the stretch more than any other was the clip of George W. Bush saying, "Read my lips" from the convention speech. That ad ran 1 million times. All right. The Willie Horton ad. All right, the revolving door ad for Michael Dukakis giving the murder of the furlough, and then goes out there and murders some more people. And then the third was the ridiculous photo Michael Dukakis allowed being portrayed with him in the tank. Remember that? To try to make it look like he was a tough guy, and instead it looked like he was basically in underoos, in a training bra. Okay. This has been a frustration of me at times with Trump's MAGA movement, because I'm an ideologue. Okay, I got into this generationally. I was reared on the William F. Buckleys, Russell Kirks, Milton Friedmans. I mean, I'm a Reagan baby. Okay, I came of age politically in the Reagan era. We're all somewhat products of our environment and the times in which we live in our generation. Okay, so I originally got into this. I mean, long before I knew the gospel. I knew God and man at Yale. Okay, long before I knew I read the epistles. Okay, I had read Russell Kirk's letters. So, I mean, I'm come out of that ideological gene pool ecosystem. I'm an ideologue, and that means I'm constantly thinking initially about policy and impact, and what that means ideologically. And the MAGA movement has largely viewed itself as, we're post that now. That's a lot of times it is navel gazing. And what we really need is to expose how corrupt the system is, because until people are awakened to that, your ideology is irrelevant. Do you think that's a fair characterization?
Yeah.
And we have been at conflict with that in times. In fact, I think if we really just removed the personalities, all right, in many respects, Ron DeSantis versus Donald Trump in the non-primary we had 2 years ago was kind of a proxy for this. All right?
Agreed.
What primarily attracted me to Ron DeSantis at the time. We're the same generation. I'm a little older than him, but we're both Gen X. He also, pure ideologue, focused on policy results. I mean, you got me in the feels, man. I mean, I spent 25 years of my life, studying this and believing in this and preaching this gospel. And now we're going to actually do the Acts of the Apostles here in the state of Florida on said gospel, right?
Same applies to Ted Cruz in its own way, yeah.
Right. Trump represents for people who are either pre or post ideologue, because they have just looked at the overall corruption of the system and just said, none of that really matters. And frankly, there's a uniparty, so what's the point?
Not to mention, those two poor guys are just at the end of so many lies, failures, Mike Pence's of the world. Trump or no Trump, Trump certainly is like the steroid in it, but those two guys were just at the end of a people who just didn't believe anymore. I've seen so many frauds, I just don't believe it.
Yes. He looks like Trump. He's independently wealthy. All the same people that hate him hate me. And it looks like he just might be crazy enough to hit some of those buttons I want to see hit, right? And to me, the system has to be deconstructed. And that's the conversation. And they look at, in the past, MAGA's looked at ideologues like me and said, you're either too late or too early, depending on your perspective. We're not ready for the conversation that you are wanting to have yet. That's not where we are. Or it's too late. But it's the same result either time, which is things have to be exposed, names have to be named, stuff's got to get lit up, tires have to be kicked, and fires have to be started, right? Okay?
Yep.
Trump personally vowed to release the Epstein list during this last campaign, and more than one time. This has been something you could go into the feeds of every single high-profile member of the Trump family and the Trump administration, and they will all have posts in their feed about releasing the Epstein list, releasing the Epstein files, tell us what went on there. This was a unique breach of our social compact. Was he an intelligence asset? All right. And this isn't just Roger Stone and Laura Loomer posting stuff like this, okay? From the fridges of some condo in Florida. This is like real people who matter in MAGA world. People who have like cabinet appointments now run empires in MAGA world, including the president himself. To the MAGA base, what I see is Trump is in danger of dividing his base over this the same way that Bush did over no new taxes. Again, I'm not drawing a moral equivalency. If the choices were even as angry as I was at Trump over COVID, everything I knew about Trump's first term versus everything I knew about George H.W. Bush's first term, they were both on the ballot for a second term. I'm voting for Trump 25 times out of 7, okay? I'm voting for him as many times as people filled out ballots in certain precincts of Philadelphia for Biden that had no other names on it. You know what I'm saying? I'm one of Trump's 2,000 mules, okay? If the election is Trump versus George H.W. Bush, all right? But situationally, what I see is something very similar here. A breach of trust has happened. I am seeing MAGA people who hate my guts and have me blocked. But since Elon made it, you can now see what people have blocked you are posting. You just can't share it or respond. I am seeing MAGA people who hate my guts and have me blocked. National delegates, personalities with major followings losing their bowels over this because they view this as a breach of trust. Hey, that's great. You got your big, beautiful bill. See, here's the thing. The last few weeks, have we spent more time asking about the Epstein list or breaking down the big, beautiful bill?
The last few weeks?
Yes.
The latter.
Yeah, because I'm an ideologue. I can't. You're convincing me more and more about the need to expose the system. Okay, but I'm a native of the ideology. I'm a native ideologue. You know, the dog returns to its vomit. I can't help but get drawn back into the policy, philosophical debate and question. Okay. But a lot of these people are now like, hey, that's great. You got your big dub. Where's my big dub? You know what my big dub was going to be? I want to see people held accountable. And no, I don't think the shiny object of we're investigating, call me back when handcuffs are on somebody and there's a perp walk. Amen. Until then, nothing, as the great prophets Metallica once said, nothing else matters. Okay. That's not going to work. A better shiny object would have been to perp walk James Comey yesterday. Now that got people's attention, right? Then you could have substituted him out for Jeffrey Epstein, and whatever the reason is that you're just choosing to beclown yourself on this particular figure. That's a legitimate trade we could debate. But just, well, we might, and maybe, and there's maybe an investigation. That's not going to do it, man. That's not going to do it. And what ended up happening to George H.W. Bush is he split his own base over that. And Newt Gingrich led the Young Turks of conservatives and ideologues who led a revolt against the Bush White House. The people that were entrenched Republicans rallied around the president, gave an opening for a true disruptor like Ross Perot to emerge. And the rest is history. Because now what you're seeing, I'm seeing George Conway retweeting Glenn Beck. Did you have that on your bingo card for 2025? George Conway retweeting Glenn Beck. No? That wasn't on your 2025 bingo card? I guarantee Pat Gray did not have George Conway retweeting Glenn Beck on his 2025 bingo card, but here we are. There's now major journalistic newsletters going out this morning talking about Democrats are looking at this and may seize on it. You know, just like they seized on what happened in 1991 when George H.W. Bush betrayed his base, violated his promise.
Did you see Goebbels' Tapper now? We must have the release.
Yes, that's my point. That is my point. Now, here's the thing. Ultimately, there is one group of people who can end all of this. Because, sure, and if you're new to the online world, you need to understand there's two different types of Trump social media, MAGA social media influencer. There's the paid in MAGA influencer. That's your cat turd. Right? I mean, literally, Donald Trump says, hey, I need you to post a meme of this, and it's going out. Okay? Now, listen, I could go through Cat Turd's feed. 80, 90% of it, I probably agree with and would share. And then the other 10% of them, like, okay, I just know that's just kind of a paid grift. Fair? So that's, probably, yeah. I mean, just not calling anybody out. That's just the system, and you need to know how it works. But then there's an entirely different layer of people who are hardcore MAGA. They would be the Trump version of the DeSantis Anons you're always ripping on. Mm-hmm. They are anonymous. They're not known. Okay? Sometimes you see them and, you know, it's terrible or it's end wokeness. And these are accounts I follow and they do a lot of great work. All right. But they're not going to cocktail parties at Mar-a-Lago while, you know, the marching orders and the hymnal book is being handed out for next month's post. They're the ones that have completely broken from this. And now you're starting to see these groups of people now go at each other online. This is exactly what happened to the right when Bush violated the No New Taxes pledge. You end up separating the people who were supporting you for more principled reasons versus the people supporting you for more pragmatic ones. When you really need both of those kinds of people united behind you, and both of those kinds of people were united behind Trump in this last election at a record clip, right? There's one group of people who can end all of this. And they all are at either 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue or the Department of Justice. And they're going to decide how much they're going to let this now become an inflection point of division for their base. Because I don't see this going away. That does not mean for a month from now, if there's no answers, you're still going to get up every day and see as many posts about this as you see right now. News will force people to move on. But, you know, what happens is when you scar people enough and bruise people enough, you know, bruise indicates it's healed, right? But that mark, you can still see it. It's still there. You know what I'm trying to say here? Okay. You do that enough. And people start saying, well, if I go back to that again, I get stung or I get hurt. So I need to stay away from that. So there's a window right here to correct this. This, you know, we sat here during COVID and wondered when would the Democrats switch to blaming the thing on Trump, and they never really did. They were even more hardcore on the COVID narrative than even Trump was, it turned out, right? That never happened. Because there was too much power and control from the COVID policies that they were going to be granted. They couldn't bring themselves to triangulate it even to their advantage because the amount of power and control COVID was giving them. Just like we thought when they started blaming Trump for Operation Warp Speed and the jab not working, they never did that. Why? Because their highest hierarchy of their need here in the Democrats' Maslow's hierarchy of needs, power and control is number one, right? Well, in the MAGA Maslow's hierarchy of needs, exposure is number one. Exposure is their number one thing. They want things exposed. Trump is violating that number one ring of their hierarchy of needs. And we're heading into a midterm next year, folks, where 91 or 92% GOP turnout ain't going to do it. We need like 96, 97, okay? And the margins of these elections are going to be really small in these congressional districts all over the country that are going to determine whether Trump is effectively a lame duck the first Wednesday in November next year or not. So we've already discussed this from an Elon perspective. We've already discussed, and now you can see Elon's picking up the messaging that we warned about a few days ago. If you guys seen that, has the uptick in Elon's messaging about this. Sooner or later, Skynet is going to adapt. He's going to see that this is the issue now that would actually give me the galvanization I'm looking for. And I run the most powerful information server in the public information server in the history of this planet to push a message like that. Okay? And there's way more of a market for expose Epstein than there is denying Grandma Moses her Social Security check. Way more of a market. So again, like I've said all week, these are the kinds of decisions that lose us civil wars. This has got to get fixed. So we've talked about this from an Elon perspective. We've talked about this just from a facts on the ground and what we know and what we don't know and what we can confirm and what we can debunk. We spent time yesterday talking about why risk as much as they are on just this one particular story and person. Well, today we talk about it just strictly from a political science and math perspective. This is a real danger of opening up a rift. And yes, the Democrats will show they're crazy. They'll show they're nuts, and it'll scab and it'll bruise. But bruises are tender. Scabs can get ripped off, and they're visual reminders of where you were once hurt. Do that to people enough, and they start saying, "I got to stay away, man," because every time I go over there, I get hurt. Just a thought. What do you guys think?
Well, the news cycle, unlike in '88, moves on so quickly. I guarantee you Trump's video, when he steps in for Bondi and just answers the question, and we're moving on. Let the past die. That's basically what he said there. They're not going to try to fix this anytime soon. They're going to rely on news cycles that are also with Aaron's montage. Oh, there's 10 Democrats trying to kill ICE agents. Oh, there's Biden's doctor pleading the fifth. They're absolutely going to rely on the news cycle to just take this over very quickly and remind people you don't always get what you want. And I'm Mercurial Donald Trump, and none of you would be anywhere without me. And that's absolutely where they're going to try for several weeks. I do think people like Musk, people like Bongino are the wild cards. But Trump himself, this is the thing, he's not impacted by. I don't plan on him being impacted by this. You mentioned the midterms, very important. Is there any groundswell of feeling the heat on that? But more specifically, the guy at the end of Aaron's montage. He's the individual that might have the most to lose in all this. If they had tried to hang this around J.D. Vance running for president,
vice president trying to keep that coalition together. The list?
Yeah, because no one. J.D. Vance is a very impressive guy, and he's handpicked by Donald Trump, but he just isn't Donald Trump, and he might be made to wear that.
You hit on something that is entirely crucial here. It's not about Jeffrey Epstein per se. It's not about that. It's about trust and exposure of wicked deeds. That's what it's really about. Now, because of the short news cycle, this is what I was going to say, and being different than it was 40 years ago, I do think people will move on. They will. People who are pissed will come back in the near term. But this is the type of thing, even if what they are saying is true, the way it was handled, you get to do this once. Once. If you try doing this a similar way again, that's when things will really blow up, I believe.
Actor Neil McDonough will join us. His latest for Angel Studios, Guns N' Moses, is coming out. He'll tell us about it next. Stay tuned. So we are seeing a bit of a dip in the latest inflation numbers. Could that mean that finally we'll get the interest rate cut that President Trump has been demanding for months now? If so, you could save a ton on everything you finance. That's great news, right? But here's the thing. To cash in on those savings, you've got to make sure you got the right credit score, a higher one probably, and that's why you want Smart Credit on average. Smart Credit users raise their credit score up to 34 points in just 30 days. Imagine at a lower car payment, better mortgage rates, major savings. Smart Credit's patented technology scans your credit profile, pinpoints exactly which bills to pay and when to maximize your score. It's like having the best credit knowledge in your own pocket. So don't wait. Take control of your credit score with Smart Credit and be ready to cash in when interest rates fall. Start with your 7-day trial at smartcredit.com/Steve for just $1. That's smartcredit.com/Steve for just $1. You can see how many points you can add to your credit score and then decide if you want to go further with Smart Credit from there. That's smartcredit.com/Steve, smartcredit.com/Steve. Average points changes are based on historical data. Remember that individual results may vary and are not guaranteed. All right, we are still efforting actor Neil McDonough, but I want to continue on with the point, Aaron, that you just made here. This is not, I don't believe this is so much about Jeffrey Epstein in particular, as in accountability and trust and exposure for the MAGA movement. Meaning, I used a term trade earlier. Let's throw out a hypothetical for a second. Let's say that inside the Trump White House, they've done the math, and the collateral damage with Epstein and the amount of people wearing their own uniform that get taken down here, the math just doesn't work. All right, let's say they've done I'm not morally excusing it, not making the case for that. I'm just laying out a hypothetical situation. Let's say that's the case. All right. Let's say tomorrow an arrest warrant goes out for Anthony Fauci and the White House says, we're going to test the idea of preemptive pardons. We don't think they're a thing. Not to mention, we also not only do we not think they're a constitutional thing, we don't even think the current president, whose doctor just pled the fifth at the U.S. Congress, was actually even competent enough to even sign one. So we're going to adjudicate this all the way up to the Supreme Court while we are putting him under criminal prosecution of the Department of Justice. All right. Let's say that happens tomorrow. How much conversation do you think is still happening about Jeffrey Epstein?
Very little.
Very little would be my answer. You look skeptical.
No, I was just I'm not. In this world, I always want to take an extra beat, but I think you're right.
I mean, let's look at this in sports terms. We're at the trade deadline, okay? Pick your favorite sport, get down to the trade deadline, right? There's pluses and minuses, okay? Is that a trade that the rest of MAGA influence world, not the paid network of people, but the rest of people that are doing this out of true belief in wanting to deconstruct and expose the system, is that a trade that they take?
Because that's a level of scalp that people hate Fauci as more than they hate Jeffrey Epstein. And Epstein's this nebulous guy for a lot of the broader American public. Almost everybody knows Anthony Fauci, and some still love him, but a lot of people hate him specifically. Yeah,
see, I think, and we're going to get to this later when Daniel joins us, Glenn Beck put out a phenomenal thread yesterday on X about why this is really about civics and restoring public trust than it is about the name Jeffrey Epstein and what he may or may not have done and whom he may have and not have done it with, okay? Or Ghislaine Maxwell, for that matter. There has to be today is July 9th. We are now officially into the second half of this year. I'll just tell you, I had private text messages with Dan in the aftermath of the math club shooter trying to assassinate Trump, saying, hey, these are questions that I have, Dan. You used to serve in the secret. I'm the amateur. Am I on the right? He's like, no, you're asking the right questions. How does that guy scale a building of that magnitude, get that close with all of that local and national law enforcement there? How does he get his shot off? How were they able to take him out from 500 yards away, and yet he was able to penetrate within 150 yards? Those kinds of questions. I don't know. I'm asking. And I texted Bongino that very weekend, like, hey, am I on the right? He's like, yeah, you're on the right track. How much more do we know about that than we did in August of last year? Forget at the start of this year. How much more do we know about Matthew Cruikshank today on July 9th than we did on August 9th last year?
We know more about sloped roofs.
Yes.
And how those are difficult.
Yeah. Remember the guy who went out shooting Minnesota legislative Democrats? Like 2 weeks ago? Where, do you have any clue where that story is? I mean, the guy was preaching Christian churches, but claimed he was on orders from Democrat. I mean, you would think somebody's side has a vested interest in telling us the truth. It was Democrat officials getting assassinated. Okay,
that what you just said there, and that's language I've used. Somebody's side. Yet when neither side can seem to capitalize advantageously on the politics of these things, then you have to start asking much bigger, deeper, uglier questions.
Listen, we are the social compact is broken. And we've heard us talk about that on the show a lot in the last year and a half, too. We've explained many times what that means. Here's one of the things it means, though. Truth is, in the biblical worldview, truth is its own reward. All right? The Creator is truth incarnate. The Savior says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Right? The Gospel of John refers to Christ as the Word of God made flesh. So truth incarnate. So in the biblical worldview, the truth is its own reward. You pursue truth as a reward in and of itself. Because that's one of the ways that you may be granted the reward of hearing, well done, good and faithful servant in eternity. Because what's the ultimate truth? That which leads to salvation. But in the culture we're in right now, where the social compact is broken, there is no reward in truth. Unless there's a reward. See what I'm saying? Someone's narrative has to be affirmed and rewarded and incentivized for truth to be cared about. The truth is not its own reward in a godless culture like ours. It is in the biblical worldview, and this is one of those tensions we feel if you're a believer. You're called to stand up against the spirit of the age, but you still can't do the stuff the spirit of the age does to you. You're not allowed. You still have to live by a higher ethical standard. Now, I pointed out many times the rules of engagement of the American church are nowhere near violating love your neighbor as you love yourself. We're not even close to that. Okay? We're not even close to that. Okay? We have not even dared to approach said thing. And hey, for those of you concerned about, certain parts of the Reformed movement that you think are getting to that line, I went and spoke to those folks to make sure they knew where the line was, right? Okay. But barring that corridor over there, nowhere else is the American church even close.
You're not impressed by a Pensian furrowed brow, Steve Deace?
We're not even close to John the Baptist. You, sir, King Philip, are a whoremonger, and your wife is a whore, and it's broad daylight in the middle of the market. We're not even close, guys. We're not even close. Okay? So yes, we have to love our neighbors, we love ourselves, but right now, I kind of think you probably don't have to be all that concerned about it based on where we're starting from. All right? Just go do the thing. And then if you happen to be like the 1 out of 1,000 people that's going to even contemplate crossing that line, we'll tell you. We'll pull you back. Chances are, though, you won't. We're not even close to worrying about that. Okay? I get emails from some of you sometimes about how nasty Todd is to some of the Protestants who are nasty about Catholicism online. I'm like, get out of here, man. Get out of here. You could read stuff Luther wrote about what he hated about Judaism at the end, and you're like, Martin Luther and Nick Fuentes. Get out. You guys aren't even close. We're so freaking soft. You're not even close to what Luther and Erasmus said about each other. You're not even close. You're not even close. And it's not your fault. Particularly if you're a Protestant, we took all that church history and context and tradition and just threw it out the window. So you don't know. And you can't know what you don't know. And we said, well, that's not sola scriptura. So we threw out all the tradition, the context, and the history, but then didn't teach the Bible either. So dumb. We're dumb. We're dumb. We didn't get the tradition. We threw that out because it's not biblical, but then we didn't preach the Bible either. Nehemiah's out here doing mass deportations, including splitting up families. And you're like, well, David, Vance told me get out! Get out! Get out. We're not even close to violating that.
Sometimes when guests don't show up, you get a value added like this.
Okay. We're not even close. I don't even remember where I was. We aren't even close to that. All right? So in a culture that's godless like ours, the truth is not its own reward. And therefore, truth happens because it'll incentivize somebody for that truth to come out. So that's why I made the statement to you about sides. And you just have to assume that if the truth is not sought, no one's side is affirmed. Whether that's the guy that was assassinating Democrat state legislators, whether that's Jeffrey Epstein or the Las Vegas shooter, you just have to make the decision. Oh, well, they're not telling the truth because they can't get anything out of it. So it's a loss later, point of diminishing returns.
Or everybody's side is like, oh bleep, I don't know what the hell I would do with that yet.
Yeah, that would be an example of what I mean, but a more specific one. You bet. Yeah. So you're going to have to offer a trade, right? Let's say, because I also had a bunch of people say, "So Steve, Trump said we got to give more arms to Ukraine. He didn't mention that yesterday because you just sold out to the Orange God." Number one, okay. Trump says crap all the time, man. All the time. Remember with Donald Trump, everything is a negotiation always. Everything's a negotiation always. Number two, Donald Trump's the most accomplished foreign policy president since I've been of voting age. So he's earned a max amount of deference and grace from me on the foreign policy front. Anybody think that's unfair?
No.
Okay. So that's why it's not that big of an issue to me. As much as I don't care what happens to Ukraine and I don't care who controls 1 square foot of Ukraine, I don't care. Well, except maybe if it was going to be China, then I might care. All right? Have China convince me China's going to control Ukraine, and you might get me to care. But short of that, I don't care whether it's Putin or Zelensky. I don't care. I don't care. Neither should you, frankly. All right? But when it comes to things like the Epstein front, has Trump earned that credibility yet? Probably. That level of grace yet? Some. I mean, they did release some of the MLK files. We think they've released the JFK files. We're not entirely sure. They did release some. They've told us there's others they found and stuff. But there at least has been some more transparency than we typically see. Fair. Okay.
Yeah.
But we're certainly not to the MAGA social media influencer level of transparency for the purpose of exposing the massive ring of corruption that I think we all agree exists somewhere. We're not even close to that.
That's
right?
a great point. Do people feel about this moment right where we are now if that moment never happened?
Correct. So in this case, there's just not that level of earned respect yet. All right. So you're going to have to give your base something here. So let's just assume that they have done the math over there and they do know things we don't know. Again, just looking at this politically, not morally or any other lens, right? They do know things we don't know, and the collateral damage here, like here could be another scenario. He was Mossad. There's already enough tension within Trump's base over Israel and Jewish and the Jewish community and everything else, and they probably just decided the last thing we need right now, okay? We're in the middle of, putting the mullahs back in the ankle-grabbing position that they deserve over there in Tehran. The last thing we need right now is to release a guy whose last name is very Jewish, and it turns out he was a Mossad agent, and he was gathering blackmail intel on foreign and local dignitaries on our soil. We just don't need that right now. There's a lot bigger fish to fry about whether we can normalize relations between the Saudis and the Israelis and Iran not having. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
And let's say they did that math, and that's the math. And okay, fine. But you're going to have to give people something else. This is a trade. It's trade deadline now. You're going to have to give them something else then. And that's something else. Well, we're thinking about it. We opened it up. I think we all know what Kash Patel means diddly and squat. Fair? I think we all recognize that. Nobody knew what a Kash Patel was 5 years ago, okay? Nobody cared until like 2 years ago. I think we all recognize Kash Patel's word on virtually anything deserves no level of deference or credibility, even approaching Donald Trump's. Fair?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's not going to work. Well, I'm contemplating, thinking about it. Pam Bondi can't be like, hey, I've got the reinstatements of Steve Friend and the other FBI whistleblowers on my desk. No, you better. Yeah, we've heard that one before. Her credibility, where's that at, you think? Down there with the amount of girlfriends Lindsey Graham's had, you think? Okay.
It's in that.
It's a low number.
It's in that neighborhood.
So that's not going to work. All right. We're going to need something. Going to have to give us a trade. Because it's really not about Epstein specifically, as about the higher principle of exposure of corruption and malfeasance within our own government. So then, okay, if we're not going to make an example out of Jeffrey Epstein, and let's say that they have reasons, legit reasons, that are legit calculations why they think that's too much collateral damage, then offer up somebody else. But there's got to be a somebody else here. The two main reasons people voted for Donald Trump. It wasn't because they like the perpetual tan. It's not even because they think he's funny, and he is. But the two biggest reasons people voted for Donald Trump, number one, he's not Joe Biden. Number two, that he would be an instrument of disruption to expose what's gone on in our government, including from some of the same forces that tried to assassinate him in Butler, Pennsylvania a year ago. See what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. When you are betraying people on one of the top two issues they would vote for you, danger. Okay? So to quote the great prophet Cuba Gooding Jr., help me help you. Okay? If the name's not Epstein, it will have to be another name. It will have to be another high-value target. Somebody else will then have to be offered up. Some other demonstration of accountability or justice. Because it doesn't have to be Jeffrey Epstein, but it does have to be somebody or something. It has to be somebody.
And we do have a target-rich environment.
And it's not like you're lacking for options here. Okay? Like, let's say they just put cuffs on James Comey yesterday. How many people are talking about Epstein today? It wouldn't go away, but the number, it would, because he's not as valuable of a target as, say, a Fauci, but it would have greatly reduced the amount of tension and heat in the room. Fair?
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So someone's got to get arrested. Someone's got to get busted. Someone's got to get exposed. Some dots have got to get connected here. So choose one then and give it to us.
It's Harvey Keitel at the end of National Treasure. Somebody's got to go to jail for this.
Yes, indeed. All right, hour two and buy, sell, or hold is next. All right, back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here alongside Todd Erzen and Aaron McIntire. Let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. Steve at stevedeace.com is how you could email the program. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on X at Steve Deace Show. Like us on Facebook, me, we, and Gab. Follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Please subscribe to our new YouTube channel. All right, we have really slowed down there, frankly, with YouTube subscriptions. And I know there's more than 14,700 people that access this show every day. Otherwise, I wouldn't have this job. So let's keep that going. All right, we need to really grow on that platform if we can. Maybe we can't again. You know, that's why I filed a complaint with the Federal Trade Commission the first time. But let's give it a shot. All right. Subscribe, please, on YouTube at Deace Show on YouTube. That's at Deace Show on YouTube. And then don't forget, if you love the podcast version, thanks. You guys are the biggest part of our audience. Hit subscribe or on Apple iTunes follow. That way, every time we do a new episode, it shows up every single time in your feed. You can also, if you wouldn't mind doing this as well, give us a 5-star review. Do they do 10-star reviews?
Where?
They should. We should do 10-star reviews.
Oh, yeah.
For us alone.
Just exactly. In fact, hit 5-star, but then inside the body of your review, say it would be 10 stars. I'd give it 10 if I could.
What about second breakfast?
Indeed. Yes, thank you. All right, so thanks to the tens of thousands of you that have done that for us as well with the 5-star reviews. We do appreciate it. And you know, I appreciate my sheets over from Miracle Made. If you want their temperature regulating sheets for better quality sleep, they're self-cleaning, they're comfortable, high quality. Take it from somebody who travels a lot, speaking around the country, right? And I stay in anywhere. Doing this, I've stayed everywhere. Some people will put you up in the Ritz-Carlton. Some people we got to put you up in the Motel 6. All right, so I've done it all. Okay, these are some of. They're not just incredible in terms of temperature regulating. They're also some of the comfiest sheets I've ever slept in. All right, I'm a huge believer. As I've told you guys before, we wouldn't promote anything to you we didn't believe in. Then there's some things, though, I go back and show you how much I really believe in it, that I buy more of it out of my own pocket. This is one of those things. All right, so upgrade your sleep as the weather gets hot, but it'll be great for you, too, when the weather gets cold later in the year-round. All right, you're going to love it. Go to Miracle Made or trymiracle.com/Deace for Miracle Made. Trymiracle.com/Deace to try your Miracle Made sheets today, whether for yourself or a gift for somebody else. When you do, you can save over 40% off. And if you use the promo code Deace at the checkout, you get a free 3-piece towel set and save an extra 20% as well. And they're so confident in their product over there at Miracle Made, 30 days, money-back guarantee. You won't be needing it, though. You're going to love it. Trymiracle.com/Deace. That's trymiracle.com/Deace. Use the code Deace for the extras. Trymiracle.com/Deace, code Deace. Update on Neil McDonough. He did try to connect with us towards the end of the segment, so we just probably got our wires crossed. Love the dude, so we're going to try to... The movie doesn't come out to the 18th, so we got a little bit of time still, right? So we will try to get him rescheduled. Can't promise, though, I'll wear this Captain America shirt again that day, though, for him. So... Now I know how chicks feel. I got all dressed up for you, and look what happened. All right?
Yeah.
That's exactly what's going on here.
I think I just extended Pride Month. I should not have done that.
If you know so much about chicks, what are you doing here behind a gas and sip at like 11 p.m.
Indeed.
on a Friday night?
Right now, even chicks are listening to this. Like, leave some chicks for the rest of the bros, God, buddy. All right? Yeah, exactly. All right. Let's get to buy, sell, or hold. All right? This is where you guys... send in the submission that Todd and I are about to see for the first time. Aaron has seen them all, has selected the ones that he wants us to respond to. We will respond with a buy or with a sell. We are permitted to say hold, because that is part of the game, but it is also considered a huge betrayal of the dude code and therefore something heavily emasculating, all right, is required of you in order to do so, okay? And... you know what? I think your punishment this week is you have to get Sean Gunn and Lindsey Graham together and find out who really loves illegal aliens more, if you know what I'm saying.
Okay. You'll find out before me. You're going to the movie. It's
Sean Gunn. Here's the thing. I know several people who have seen it. Or know of several people. None of it. Here's what's funny. I just got a text from Chris Jones, one of my co-producers for Nefarious. Okay, he just texted me and said, "Listen, we have some extra team in town, and all of them are saying as much as they love Superman, they're not going to go see it now after what Sean Gunn said." Okay, and I'll tell you guys what I just texted to Chris. They have only themselves to blame. Because I'm just going to tell you, I know at least a half a dozen people that I either know personally or I know professionally who have already seen it. And all of them, all from our viewpoint. And they'll all tell you, it's not woke at all. Not in the least. In fact, if anything, chicks are back. We're back to chicks in high heels and cleavage. Okay. I mean, if anything, it looks like it's a comic book right out of the 1980s. It's not woke at all. So they only have themselves to blame. Then you do all this work for 2 years. Making this film, you have all the right messaging, and you got James Gunn, his brother, talking about, I live in rural Georgia, and I'm surrounded by people who vote differently than me, and I just want to, have a unifying character. Now, they may not have made a good movie, okay? There's a lot of debate about that. But from everybody I know that has seen it, you can tell they tried to make a movie of unifying themes, that they did go out of their way to do that. And then apparently had the actor's brother, who's in the movie for all of 90 seconds, decided to go ahead and lift his leg and pee on the fire hydrant in full view of everybody. So... that's why we had that. I think we were the only ones that had that shot yesterday, Aaron, of the CEO of Warner Brothers hanging himself, I believe. Yeah. Now, here's the thing on that film. The reviews are so good and the audience score of the early screens are so high. Maybe they'll survive this. We'll find out on Monday, when the box office tickets come out. But
there's a lot of mediocre reviews, too.
Yeah, I mean, it's sitting at like 90% on Rotten Tomatoes right now, though.
Yeah, but
doesn't that make you go?
That doesn't.
Uh-oh.
Except when the audience score is also 95%. Yeah. But here's the thing. We'll see. The people into the early screeners are going to be the most excited about seeing it. So we'll see how it goes, throughout the rest of the weekend.
Excited, yes.
Yeah. All right, let's get to it. All right, buy, sell, or hold. We'll get through as many of these as we can. What remains, we'll do in the overtime exclusively for subscribers. Aaron, fire away.
All right, we will begin with this one. This is from our friend Steve Friend. The picture of Pam Bondi in front of a desk full of files.
Man.
He says reinstatements are coming any minute now. Files are on the desk. Buy, sell, or hold.
Maybe, you know what? This afternoon, DC Drano's out there waving a binder. I've got the reinstatements, guys. They're right here. And then you open it up, it says reinstatements part 1. Turn the page, they're all blank. See, this is what you've done to yourself. Your credibility is shot. To restore your credibility, by the way, buy on this, I love it. But to restore your credibility, you're going to have to give your people something. That's what we were just talking about. Okay, so if it can't be Epstein for whatever reasons you guys may know that we don't, okay, you're the generals. Sometimes you have to follow orders you don't believe in. But if you want to keep you want to keep troop morale high, and you want your troops to go out there and live and breathe and die for you after you disappoint them, you better give them something else then. That's all. This is just simple math, man. You got to give them something else, and it can't be maybe kind of thinking about No. Has to be something else, another high-value target.
Feeling you, Steve. Feeling you.
Aaron Riali has a Mount Rushmore of founding-era media. Hamilton, Liberty's Kids, Turn, Washington's Spies, 1776. Honorable mention Johnny Tremaine and John Adams. Puts that in the honorable mention since he's never seen John Adams.
So I've seen. I'm gonna sell. I have not seen Washington Spies. I heard it was good, but I've not seen it. I've seen the other 3. Liberty's Kids was a big part of our homeschooling curriculum with the kids back in the day. Very well done. And I'm not a big, Broadway musical guy. I thought Hamilton was okay. Didn't find it to be like a transcendent experience. And maybe I was hurt because by the time I saw it, all the people had already politicized it, even though a lot of it affirms our view of history, the actual musical does, okay? But similar to what we were just saying with Sean Gunn, they had already so politicized it that it kind of tainted my view of it going in, I thought it was okay. 1776 is kind of a hidden gem. I have seen the John Adams miniseries, though. It has to be on the list. That's why I'm going to sell. Has to be on the list. Has to be. I've seen Johnny Tremaine as well. All right, that's that's classic Walt Disney right there. All right, so, but John Adams has to be on the list.
Totally agree. John Adams is incredible.
Next we go. Where's The Patriot?
Oh gosh, you're right. How does that on the list?
Yeah.
Okay, then we're definitely a sell. Yes.
Trevor says after the 1 millionth and one Lindsey Graham joke, he will be summoned and enact all of the jokes on Steve. What happens if you stand in front of a mirror and just say Lindsey Graham?
Lindsey Graham.
Lindsey Graham.
I love this. Bye. It's great. That's great.
Well, by the way, tomorrow's guest running against Lindsey Graham.
Oh, that's right. And it's not. Here's the thing. I don't get involved in a lot of the primaries anymore because, frankly, I just don't think a lot of the candidates have built credible campaigns that are worth airtime. In this case, this is a guy who's a former LG who's won statewide in South Carolina already. All right. So I'll listen. Yeah. We'll give that a whirl. You bet.
Next, we go to Stu Spirit Gerbil, or is it Gerbil? A major reason socialism is rapidly gaining popularity is most Americans under 40 have only heard the left's description of it. Our education system, with teaching the truth about it, our education is not teaching the truth about it. A close second reason is that those under 40 are or feel boxed out of the current system.
I think this is right on the money.
I think those are the two driving reasons. Yeah.
I'll buy for sure. I thought that... who was it on our network made a point a few days ago, and I think I sent it to you guys and said, hey, we should get them on to talk about it. One of the ladies on our network, who was it, made the point that the New York mayoral candidate.
Mamdani.
Mamdani, yeah.
Liz Wheeler.
Liz Wheeler, was it? Okay. Made a great point that, yes, what he is selling is evil, but he's selling it in a way that addresses people's needs, okay? And that's why it's gaining traction. And I thought that was exactly right on the money. And I think that's what Two-Spirit Gerbil is kind of alluding to here for sure.
Yes.
So definite buy, very salient analysis on your part, brother or sister.
And she's going to be our guest next week on that and many other topics. But I will say, you did say major reasons, but that's not comprehensive. Another one is what I talk. It has to do with the church. Mm-hmm. But another one is we like socialism because it speaks to our addiction to comfort, and it's somebody else's job, and a lack of true devotion to citizenry. And on that front, make sure you read Oren McIntire's column today. It's like, honestly, it's not a word would I change. It's like I wrote it because it's the theme I've been hammering over and over and over again.
Next, we go to Hank, who says Bondi was never going to release the Epstein list. That's why she's been on Fox News so much. It's her golden parachute. She is a necessary sacrificial lamb, and she knows it. The uniparty is real, and she's a player. This is why they wouldn't let us have Matt Gaetz. Buy, sell, or hold.
I don't blame you for thinking this at all, but I know people who know her, and I am told dramatically differently, so I'm going to sell. Frankly, I think you're giving Pam Bondi way too much credit from what I know of her. I don't think she's nearly deep or clever enough. Okay. And if you're going to force me to theorize what happened with her, she's a native Romneyite, not MAGAite. Okay. Just kind of glommed onto Trump like a lot of people do in the Republican Party that have been fixtures before him, just out of absolutely nothing other than craven opportunism. Okay. And I think that she thought she was going to get in there and she's just in over her skis. And if she was as smart and clever as you're thinking, she wouldn't have overpromised the entire time. She'd have way better explanations than what she's already offered. Okay. And it's not even this. I mean, the memes going around of Matthew Foley saying, for the love of God, please arrest somebody. Those memes were going around long before this past week's disappointments. Okay. She's in over her head, way over her head. She's just a typical Republican. Not a communist, but not anybody you're calling in a fight in a back alley against the spirit of the age at all. She's just in completely and totally over her head and thought this was just a shtick and a grift, okay, and has just been caught with her knickers down to her ankles and is incapable of digging herself out of it. And that's why she should be fired. Her credibility is shot, and I'm not sure how it could possibly be recovered without the kind of high-value target in substitute for Jeffrey Epstein that I've already alluded to.
I think the truth is somewhere in between what Steve just said and your assertions, but let's not paint Matt Gaetz as the white knight would have saved us all. That's an absurd overreach, and we know Dan Bongino's in there. I don't think Dan Bongino suddenly became a sellout or a coward. I absolutely don't think that. I think there is something very, very large and nefarious and dark going on here, and whatever your explanation is, make sure it's not just too clean and easy. And as soon as you say that's why we couldn't have nice things like Matt Gaetz, come on. I mean, not that he didn't do important things, and sometimes he was like the only guy who would just go gonzo, even though he has a shady past. But like, I'm not going to white knight the guy. There's no way.
Let me say this about Gaetz. I don't know him at all. I did one fundraiser with him for Chip Roy last year. Only personal interaction with him I've ever had. I have friends who think the guy's a creep. I have guys who think the guy is incredible. Okay. So I have no opinion at all other than people do not, at his age, voluntarily give up a congressional seat in a district that hasn't voted for a Democrat since JFK to be on OAN. Okay. They just don't. So I'll leave it at that.
Next, we go to Depopulate Davos, who has the Mount Rushmore of accountability, meaning people need to be arrested for these incidents: the scamdemic, election fraud, Chinese and foreign collusion, the border invasion coordination, honorable mention J6 persecution, and H-1B visa fraud.
You're a variation of the thing we were just talking about. All right, let's talk, since you brought up election fraud, let's throw this out there as a possible trade. It gets announced tomorrow. Ed Martin that they didn't want to let be the U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia. But he's been given kind of a special master role in the administration. Ed Martin has now been put in charge, independent counsel in charge of investigating election fraud in America, the status of election integrity in America, including the 2020 election results. No boundaries whatsoever, unfettered, just like the Mueller probe. Go get him.
Let's arrest Katie Hobbs, shall we?
What does that do to reduce the Epstein tension right now if that announcement were made? I think it reduces it some.
Yeah.
I think it reduces it some. Again, I don't think that's because that's a blob of people. It could be Katie Hobbs. It could be the Philadelphia, election board. But it's not a singular villain like Epstein is. But but that would be something, right?
Yeah.
They need to be thinking in the White House and at DOJ. You need to be thinking in those kinds of terms right now. You got to restore trust with your base.
Next, we go to Russell, who says woke will be more lethal to Superman than kryptonite. Kind of already discussed this.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm going to buy, if only, even though given the trend lines I'm seeing, I actually think it's going to open very strong. And the fact I know people who have seen it and it's not woke at all. But I'm going to buy because that's kind of a subjective opinion. What is objectively known is they spent 2 years and in all of their messaging trying to make this look as Americana as absolutely possible. And then to have the director's brother just go out there and show his red ass at the premiere, just incredibly dumb. That's objectively true, so I will buy. I think there'll be some penalty for that. I don't know what. I'll buy.
Yeah, I'm going to sell because I don't. This is that graph. Women getting more woke and men seemingly going in an opposite direction. They're just anti-woke. It doesn't mean they're ultimately aspirational. And again, that's the problem with I haven't read a single review, good, bad, or otherwise, that ultimately says that this is doing the thing that these movies should do. Even when they're done well, they didn't do that. They didn't create men who want to go be real life heroes. The most excited, as Steve said before about these things, are guys who are like, this is not my Superman. I mean, that's why these movies are ultimately failures. I don't care how much money it makes. I don't care if they're not woke at all. If you see these movies and then go and don't do anything in real life, these movies are failing us because they're ultimately creating weak men who are voyeurs. They just want to watch and never do.
Joe Lynch says Calvin Coolidge should be on Mount Rushmore, but if he were alive and president, he would deny funding.
Correct.
I love the second part.
Correct.
I think the first part's entirely subjective based on opinion. It's like the four names up there are schmucks, okay? But the last part is a banger, all right? I love that. That's the most Calvin Coolidge thing you could have possibly said, so I'll buy. That's really good. Well done.
Next, we go to Token White Man, iconic TV theme songs of the 1960s in no particular order, and then he puts them in order. I don't get that. Number 10, The Flintstones. Number 9, Gilligan's Island.
These are all bangers.
Number 8, I Dream of Jeannie.
Yes.
Number 7, The Monkees.
I mean, that was like a number 1 Billboard hit, that song was.
Number 6, Star Trek. Number 5, Batman. 4, Addams Family. 3, Mission Impossible. Oh, yeah, that was a TV show before it was the movies. 2, Twilight Zone.
Yes.
And 1, Andy Griffith Show.
So
I think in that particular order, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I don't know that that's the order I'd put them in, but I think those 10 are just all Hall of Famers, man.
Yeah, fine.
Okay. And since we're just doing the 60s, I mean, that's banger after banger right there. You bet.
Next is Bruce Jenner's uterus. There is a direct...
Still one of my all-time favorite account names.
And I got a variation of what he or she said here multiple times, multiple submissions about this.
This and Zero Fox Given might be my 2 all-time, but I think she hates me now. But I still think her name is great, along with Bruce Jenner's uterus, yes.
There is a direct connection between the big, beautiful bill passing by July 4th and the Epstein case being closed 2 days later.
So I have... This was going to be on Feedback Friday, so I'll take it out now because it'll be a redundancy. I've probably gotten 25 emails with this. That this was the leverage used to get some of these people that didn't want to vote for this to vote for it. And they're not talking like the Chip Roy people, like the rhinos that didn't want to vote for it, okay?
Yeah. I've seen this and the Iran bombing both.
Yeah, so at this point, I'll go back to what I said the first hour.
Yeah.
At this point, their handling of this is so blatantly dishonest. And frankly, dumb. It's also dumb. Really smart people doing dumb things. In general, in politics, folks. In general, even when it's your team. When people are fine looking stupid in public, it's because what goes with the real answer is so bad and sinister. They'll bite the bullet and just look stupid. No one likes looking dumb. Okay, especially if you're attached to the Trump White House. So they don't deserve your deference on this. On lots of other things they do, and they've earned it. Okay, but on this one they don't. They don't deserve it. So project however. At this point, I'm not here to police and referee any projection on this at all. Doesn't mean I agree with all of your projections, but I'm not here to say that goes too far, that's too nuts. Project away. They've earned it. Bye.
Correct.
Next, we're going to go to this 10 things in no particular order, this time not numbered, that are absolutely Americana.
Okay.
This better be a good list, Steve.
Yep.
Senny. Baseball.
Check.
Yep. Hot dogs.
Check.
Local or state fairs.
Check.
Fireworks.
Check.
Firearms.
Check.
Barbecue.
Check.
Block parties. I don't know about that.
I don't know about that one, but I'll check it because
Those used to be like a thing like a decade ago, right? Or maybe, did you have them growing up?
Yeah, but I'm thinking more like, did they do those like in, Hungary? I don't think that they do. Okay,
this is the one that I definitely disagree with. Lake or beach days.
Yeah, that's everywhere.
a universal thing.
Yeah.
Summer concerts.
Check. I'll check on that.
That's kind of everywhere too. And most elected officials being as useful as a screen door on a submarine.
Overall, it's a very strong list. Overall, it's a very strong list, so I'll buy.
Sure.
Next we go Bullfrog. Todd has already secretly played college football 26.
Yes!
That's such a coping mechanism.
I feel like that Thor meme. Yes!
And I'm the meme, Steve. Be honest with the British. There's no way. I haven't played it.
No, I know he hasn't played it. I've not played it either yet.
Refuse to play it.
Yeah. I will, but I just haven't gotten to it yet.
So can you do Road to Glory as a kicker?
I have no idea. I've only ever done...
If you can, you should create Todd Erzen.
Create Todd as a kicker. Yeah. Have him do the hat.
Yeah.
You know what I'll do is I'll do that. I'll film it. We'll put it up on all our official social media pages.
No burner accounts. No video games. No.
What you do have is a lot of vinegar.
Yes.
Next.
Todd Erzen straight.
Tom Hinshaw says Elon Musk's America Party becomes a major player in politics for 2026 midterms or 2028. America Party becomes the de facto party of very devoted conservatives in those same years.
I'm gonna sell right now. I'm gonna sell right now, but I would not dismiss the possibility of this. Well, the first part, I don't know that it'll become. I don't ever see it being the party of devoted conservatives. But could I see it become, and this goes to what you said about whether we're talking about JD who comes after Trump and you're trying to keep that coalition together, and you're one of these expose people, right? God bless you. But that's your driving thing is you want these evils exposed, It won't be the devoted conservatives who leave the Republican Party. We had ample opportunity to do that long before Trump came along. We're not doing that. Yeah. It'll be the exposure people. They'll be the ones that he'll attract. That's what you'd have to worry about. All right. I'm going to sell for now, but I would not dismiss this entirely.
Yeah, sell.
I think there is, I don't know how big this is, how large this is. There is a section of voters who would typically vote Democrats, and they're largely millennials who are just hipsters that something like this might appeal to. Now, I don't know how large that demographic is, but I think that's one way there where it might actually hurt Democrats, at least in the near term, more than Republicans. But again, who knows what the defining issue is that America will latch on to. America Party, I should say. Next, Revival or Bust says this Epstein debacle will make the current DOJ work harder in other areas to please their base. This whole thing could be a win of sorts, maybe.
I think there's potential for that. And here's the thing. I hope that this is the case, because if not, you're looking at a replay of, history doesn't just repeat, it also rhymes. And yes, I know that's not how the saying goes. That's my version of the saying. That's how I think the saying should go. So I've seen this play out before. So I'll buy, because this is probably what needs to happen. They either need to give on the Epstein front or this needs to happen.
Think about a terrible, immoral cynical example last time. Let's say even if Trump is on it, but certainly if a lot of people are on it, but Trump's like, I'm 80 years old if my name goes out, and he is in fact using this as leverage to get big, beautiful deals done and all kinds of other things done. But if it's suddenly released, all hell breaks loose on any number of levels. That's a terribly cynical answer on it, but there is a grain of truth to what you are talking about.
60-second man says, God says, I've searched for justice and found only injustice. I've looked for what is right and have only heard the cries of dismay. Woe to those who exchange light for darkness and darkness for light. Isaiah 5:7-20. Trump DOJ walked right into Isaiah 5.
Well, I mean, that's right out of a biblical worldview. I can only say amen. I can only say amen to that. Yeah.
Adam says Steve would smoke cigars regularly if they were pumpkin spice flavored.
They've got to be pumped. I mean, Swisher
I'm sure
Sweets,
those
I
exist.
bet there are.
Yeah, but on this one, I'd be more inclined to be in a room where guys are smoking them. Just the act of smoking appeals to me like negative integer. Period. That being said, should such flavor exist, my willingness to hang out with you would absolutely go up. That part's true.
You would not smoke a pumpkin spice cigar.
No,
but you would smoke just straight pumpkin spice.
Maybe just snort it. Just get it quicker into the metabolism. Yes.
Yeah, I'm selling. You should not smoke pumpkin spice cigars.
Dirk Van Wyk says Pam Bondi being replaced with Ron DeSantis would be good for the administration, the country, and DeSantis' political future. I think that's going to happen.
Bye.
You do think that's going to happen?
Yeah.
All right. Well,
next year.
I'm more inclined to have Ron DeSantis replace Clarence Thomas on the U.S. Supreme Court.
Or that.
But I'm fine with this option too, so I'll buy. Yeah.
Jonathan says Steve will wait until Pop Culture Tuesday to give his obligatory review of Superman to give the audience a chance to see it first.
Yeah. I mean, I'll put something online without any spoilers, but we won't talk about it until Tuesday of next week for sure. Yes.
Oh, that's what he said. That's a call.
So bye.
Moving on to Free People. Casey DeSantis will run for Florida governor in 2026 and win.
I hate having to answer this because people are going to assume my answer. It has inside word. It doesn't. I have not talked to Ron or Casey since probably March. Okay. But I don't see any outwards. So I'm just looking at this now as an observer. I don't see any outward signs of a run by her. Like to me, last week when Trump was at Alcatraz and he brings Byron Donalds there, to me, she should have been there too then. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't. So I just don't see any outward signs of a run by her right now. So I'm going to sell.
I'll sell. Also, going back to the last question about profile, his profile actually goes up if she doesn't run and they give it to somebody else and it just becomes GOP smush land. It's because everybody realizes
people pine for him all the more.
Yeah.
I wonder if he can come back and run again. Is it 2 terms concurrent or forever in Florida?
I do not know.
I'll have to look that up. More in a moment. Folks, I've got 2 questions for you. Number 1, have you considered how your investments might unknowingly be funding policies that are anathema to your values? Number 2, are your hard-earned investment dollars being used to oppose the values you just voted for in the last election? Well, your investments, they should be working as hard for your values as you do. I mean, if you're a Christian investor, for example, you may not realize that portfolios can include companies funding causes that directly contradict the scripture. So be a faithful steward of God's resources, all right? Support businesses that honor those biblical principles, right? Who can help you do that? Our friends over at Constitution Wealth. Unlike many other advisors, they can specifically screen investments for Christian values, ensuring your money supports the businesses that honor you and your God. So don't let your wealth unknowingly fund causes that oppose biblical truth. Take control of that biblical mandate and your obligation today by visiting constitutionwealth.com/blaze for a free consultation. That's constitutionwealth.com/blaze for a free consultation. And remember that Constitution Wealth is a registered investment advisor. You should review their disclosures at constitutionwealth.com to understand their services and fees. All investing involves risk, including the risk of loss. I'm a client of the firm. This is a paid endorsement, but my opinions are my own. His opinions are his own as well. He's the prophet of woe and lamentation, Daniel Horowitz. So, Daniel, we have welcome back to the show, brother. We've spent the last pretty much all week talking about the first, I would say, emblematic of what we saw too often in the first term, rake step by the Trump administration over Epstein. And they, whether it's the comments from Bondi and Alina Habba and others, they're self-cornered. There's no Fauci to deflect off of. There's no, but the Democrats here, and as a result, you're seeing their own base go to war against one another online. You're seeing the people who are either paid to be loyal or personally loyal say, "Hey, we have to give them a chance here," and the other people that are in this for the cause more than the relationship are like, "This is a red line to us."
Paid on Twitter to talk about Epstein for 5 years too.
That's a good point too. Yeah, I should have mentioned that when we talked about that first hour. I didn't. That's a good point for you too. All right, so I talked about this being akin to Bush violating no new taxes when I was a kid. And I'm not drawing a moral equivalency between the George H.W. Bush presidencies and Trump's. I'd vote for Trump over H.W. Bush 10 times out of 6. Okay, but situationally, what that did to split his base, because that was a red line for his base at that moment, and this has been kind of a red line for his base as well. And I think where guys like you and I have struggled somewhat with MAGA folks in the past is we're ideologues. So we got into this, we read Russell Kirk and William Buckley and Rush Limbaugh and Ronald Reagan growing up. So we're in this for the ideology, right? Okay. Well, these people got into this because they think that government, the deep, insipid corruption and malfeasance in government has to be exposed. And they see Trump as the sort of independent figure that'll expose that kind of stuff, right? To me, there's two reasons you voted for Trump in the last election. One, he wasn't Joe Biden. And two, you think he's this kind of an exposure change agent. And so this goes right to the heart of his base. And I do think that this has schism potential, which is why I think they either need to reverse themselves on this, or let's say maybe there's too much collateral damage where Epstein is concerned, and that's why they've backtracked. Then they've got to offer up another high value target here. And it's not, we're thinking about James Comey. No, like Anthony Fauci's got to be like in handcuffs. Ed Martin's got to be given like a Mueller-like probe to go after election fraud. Something with real teeth to show. Fine, this won't be the high value target, but something else has to be. What are your thoughts on that?
So I agree with your last point that you made, that I think it's got to be some sort of scandal offered up. It can't be a policy because no one cares about that. Mm-hmm. It's got to be,
which I know is painful for you to admit, but that is the era, and sadly, in which we are in.
Oh, it's just, I mean, there's no question. I definitely think it has to be someone offered up, but I do think they've done a good job in the past at redirecting. There were rake stepping activities in the first term, but I think what they've always finessed very well, much to my chagrin when I wanted to, resolve a certain issue or, make a fight out of it, is that they are pretty good at redirecting. Obviously, the mistake here was that they didn't do a limited hangout. And just the opposite, they actually reversed and, regressed from what they originally hung out. Mm-hmm. That was part of the problem. And they indulged the influencers and then made a fool out of them. So you got to feed the grift. You can't grift the grift. And that was where the mistake was. But I just want to interject here, because I think this is important for this and everything else as well. I really do think it's important for us to pause and recognize the unprecedented nature of the times we live in with technology and politics that really, belies any example from history you can give from George W. Bush or Harriet Meyer's moment, because what you have nowadays, and maybe I'm like the last fool to find out because I didn't know this. So I always thought that Twitter was driving people to subscriptions or, your podcast, radio show, or print or website or something. I had no clue that there are people earning millions and then a lot earning hundreds of thousands a year off of X itself. I had no idea. I literally didn't know that. And that might sound corny. I thought it was like, just pocket change or something. I mean, there were people that I have heard that were earning, aren't even that big, hundreds of thousands a year, 30,000 a month. And then when they went against the anti-Israel narrative, they dropped. And I bring this in because you have, like we said, there's people that their entire livelihood depends on just hawking what Trump does, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. But then what we saw with the Iran thing and now this as well, there is a little bit of independence, but not necessarily in the way you want it to be, that they've earned a living off of milking certain things. And we live in an era now where we don't trust anything, and that's fine. And to quote something that rhymes with Tucker, it's okay to ask questions, but not when you're really asserting definitively that this is exactly what happened. I know it. And then you build an entire career out of it. And I think this is the mistake. Clearly, there's more than what they're telling us based on what they originally said and what we know. But too many people on this and other things, they assert definitively that this is exactly what happened and this is what happened on 9/11. And then it just takes on a life of its own. Mm-hmm. And I'm really struggling to have even an intellectual debate or discussion over any of this stuff when all these people doing this have a vested interest in the propagation itself. You see what I mean? Like during the Bush era, it had to be more traditional, like you're on K Street, you advocate for a certain policy because you're getting paid by certain companies. But here, you are literally able to go online. It still amazes me. You don't have to do what you and I do and do a show in a lot of detail. You could just tweet all day and earn a living that people will never earn in their lifetime. It's truly shocking. So I think you have to understand, not everyone earns that much money. But among the people that I think you're referencing, they earn a tremendous amount of money. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to recognize that. So do you really believe in what you're saying? Now, I think some genuinely are so emotionally bought into the Epstein thing, and it's not, you can't divorce the human emotion from that. But all I'm just trying to say, Steve, is this is not even like this type of Republican or this type of conservative or populist or nationalist.
Yeah, labels are irrelevant, you're saying, when somebody can just realize I can get paid a huge amount of money for saying a bunch of stuff, whether I believe it or not. That's what you're saying.
And when you start getting, like a kid, positive reinforcement, negative feedback, this is what brings in the money. Oh, I ask questions like this. I didn't even know there's ways that you post, or I was wondering why people have all these gay questions, like, all these gay mannerisms on Twitter. Like, where did that come from? And now I guess I'm just learning that it's the feedback loop. It helps the algorithms. I mean, this is what these guys learn and think about all day. So it's hard. My point is, as long as the algorithm is kept fed, I don't think you're going to see a rebellion.
Let's go to somebody who thinks seriously about this. Our patriarch, Glenn Beck, put a thread out about a day and a half ago. I want to share this with you and the audience and get your reaction. He said, the Epstein evidence list isn't just damning, it's clarifying. No matter what you believe about his past or fate, 5 conclusions can be logically drawn from the material already seized. This thread is for anyone who still cares about truth. This was not a small or isolated operation. Dozens of devices, thousands of photos, labeled photo albums, surveillance tapes, blueprints, foreign passports. This wasn't one man with a dark secret. This was infrastructure, logistics, coordination, a system. There's a massive digital footprint, hundreds of hard drives, USB, CDs, backup servers, some labeled with things like Nude Girl Pixbook 4, travel logs, employee directories, videotapes. The real question, why hasn't this been fully disclosed to the public? Intelligence involvement isn't a stretch. An Austrian passport with Epstein's face, honey trap style setups, international mobility, too much precision, too much reach, too many decades undetected. This isn't a wild theory. It's a logical hypothesis. The system's silence is itself evidence. If anyone else had even 1/10 of this material, underage photos, coded file names, flight logs, they'd all be under a prison. But here, crickets, no prosecutions, no answers. That's the real scandal. Our institutions are on trial. This is bigger than Epstein. It's about media complicity, justice deferred, power protected, truth buried. Until this case is fully revealed, every elite institution carries a stench they can't wash off. To dismiss this as merely conspiracy is to admit you no longer believe in accountability. Truth about Epstein is not morbid curiosity. It's a civics test. And every day we fail to demand answers, we normalize elite immunity. If we don't confront what's in those files, we've declared that truth in America is now negotiable, that justice is a luxury of the unimportant, that power is a shield for the perverse. The Epstein case isn't over. It's the Rosetta Stone of public trust. And if we don't get to the bottom of it, we'll never restore what's already been lost. What do you think?
So, no, I mean, I think obviously, look, to speak of our own Glenn Beck, he is someone who built a career off of very long form presentation and thought before all these other mediums were there. So, I mean, it's not surprising that when he uses the medium of X, he will have a thoughtful thought there. I think this is why they're going to have to do something. But there's two limiting things here. Number one, I genuinely think it's a big possibility that the Biden administration destroyed a lot of this. And I think this has likely been going on for many decades when you have transition over from one admin to another. And I think that would explain some of the Bongino, stuff where, they thought one thing, but then it's just,
One, they could tell us that. Two, they still say they have videos. Who's in the videos? Who produced the videos? You see what I'm saying? So I 100% don't think the Biden's just like, hey, guys, and over there is the box with all the Epstein files. I don't think the Biden administration or anybody did that. But they're telling us they have videos. Who's in the videos? Who is it? Who's doing the abusing in the videos? Who produced said videos? I promise you, if Daniel Horowitz went to kittyporn.com, all right, on your phone, a Fed's knocking on your door in about 30 minutes, brother. Okay, so all right, so they know who produced this stuff. Who is it then? All right, who did Ghislaine Maxwell traffic to? She gave you no names, none. We don't have any. You didn't follow her travel because you must have linked her to trafficking to somebody. Otherwise, why is she in prison? So even if the original, let's say he's a CIA asset, Mossad asset, or all these other theories out there, even if that's all gone and destroyed, there are still plenty of secondary pieces of information that can be linked here by their own admission that they say that they have.
No, and there's secondary pieces of information that link prominent world leaders to it in some way. So, I think there's a lot there. Now, there's no question there's a lot of political protection going on. Some of it they could hide behind legally because unlike with JFK's assassination, these people are still alive. And so there is a legal angle that if you want to put together a legal case, it's, you have to be careful about what you put out publicly first with regard to both perpetrators and victims. So they will be able to hide behind that. But I think now they're going to have to squeeze out a little bit more. The other thing I wanted to say that rubbed me a little bit the wrong way, and this is kind of my belief, I put it out earlier, I don't like the term Rosetta Stone. I agree with everything else Glenn said. I reject this notion of so many on our side now that at any given time they glum onto one thing, and that's the key to unlocking our history and our future and solving things. I think it's a little bit too strong of a term. I think it's possible. I just don't think that's I don't think we could necessarily assert that. And this is why I just in general choose Deuteronomy 29:28 to focus on the egregious things that are in front of our eyes. What is hidden is for God. What is before us is to keep the commandments and, keep what God told us to do. A lot of this stuff that we know there's something nefarious, but we don't know exactly, and we don't exactly have proof, and we don't know if we're going to find out. That's why I just don't expend as much energy on it. And this is not to downplay. There's clearly something of important nature here. But I do think there is a balance just in general. I'm talking about all this stuff that too many people assert things that in the past were, I have questions. This doesn't add up to me. But then there's counterpoints that if you say that thing, other things don't make sense. So what is the truth? You know what I mean? Absolutely, Biden tried to kill Trump. Nothing about what happens there made sense, but definitively, could I assert that happened? No.
I hear you. All right, I got to go. Good to see you as always, brother. Thank you.
Take care.
You bet. Brought to you by our friends over at Jace Medical. All right, the reason we love Jace, I love the fact that they came to us right in the middle of the scamdemic to say, hey, what they're doing right now can never be done ever again. Taking Nobel Prize winning medications and just smearing them as horse paste. Things like hydroxychloroquine you could buy over the counter. Most of the world are just now claiming it's poisonous and toxic, right? That's why I love these guys. It's not just what they do. It's very unique, making sure you've got backups of some of the most important medications, antibiotics in the world, just in case they're the next ones they want to take away from you right when you might need them the most. But the fact that they ran into the fire. They came to us at the Blaze in the middle of this. They saw this was happening and say, hey, we have a solution. We want to get in that battle. right? So if you want to make sure you've got that peace of mind to know the next time that couldn't happen here happens here, and you've got the meds you need, you can expand it now. They've got an ever-growing menu of medications as well to go beyond just those 5 integral antibiotics like amoxicillin, doxycycline, and more. Go to jace.com, J-A-S-E. Use the discount code DACE at checkout to get a discount. That's why they call it a discount code. Discount code DACE at checkout at jace.com, J-A-S-E, jace.com. Discount code DACE for the discount. Gentlemen, final thoughts?
I thought that was an interesting point there at the end. It isn't the Rosetta Stone, but that's why it's a target-rich environment. There are lots of Rosetta Stones, and so hopefully he goes after them. I think he understands that. He's been active ever since he got in.
You mean that he is the president?
The president of the United States, thank you. That I just think he thinks that he's not going to get enough juice out of this particular squeeze.
Yeah, the thread from Glenn Beck is why I'm trying to be as humble as possible here with saying, hey, maybe what they're saying, what the DOJ is saying right now is actually true, that he really did kill himself, that there was not evidence of blackmail, yada, yada, yada. But going through that thread again, it's just like what they're claiming can't be true, not 100% true. And so if they decided for whatever reason we need to cover this up, this was really poorly thought out and a really poorly thought out messaging strategy to get that message out. It's just a cluster.
Romans 8:28.